Hey there, you are listening. In case you didn't know, when you hit the play button, you are listening to the Mr. Productivity Podcast. And today, I'm talking with Kinsey Soderberg. Now, if you are expecting an Eeyore presentation, you've got two tigers from Winnie the Pooh on the show today. So you're going to feel really good when we're all done. She is the CEO and the founder of Feel Good Social and Authentic AI. Have you heard of AI? It's kind of a big deal. Where she, meaning Kinsey, is redefining what it means to build a business that stays true to your values. Kinsey, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mark. Thank you so much for having me.
I am excited to have you on the show because we're going to be talking about AI, something I love. I was afraid of it in the beginning. I had these images of Terminator, or it was going to come down and attack us and kill all the humans. And it may do that at some point, but not at this point. But now it is my number one productivity tool. I love the fact that when we're done recording, I take this transcript. I have a magic prompt. I call it a magic prompt. I put it into Claude. I put the transcript in there. It'll give me the title for the episode, the podcast description. It'll convert the transcript into a readable blog post. And it's just amazing. So I want people to understand there's no need to be afraid of AI, right?
Mm-hmm. That was actually part of my journey too, when I first started hearing about these tools, because people always think that's funny, because I have my brand Authentic AI, and I'm like, yeah, but when I first started hearing about them, I like to compare myself to Mr. Wilson from Dennis the Menace, the grumpy neighbor, like shaking my fist at the sky, being like, isn't the internet fake enough as it is? What's this going to do to our creativity or critical thinking skills? Is AI going to take our jobs or take over the world, right? Like I had all of those, I call them the AI scaries, run through my brain too and stuff. So I feel that. I feel people who are hesitant to use AI. And I just want to say that I had one of those come to Jesus moments with myself. It was one of those long drive epiphanies where I realized that, okay, the reason I am so grumpy about AI tools is because I'm afraid of the change they'll bring, of what this is going to mean for our future, our society, all that stuff. But I was like, it's not a lion. I don't have to run away from AI. It's here. And the best thing I can do instead of turning away from it is turn toward it and get curious about how can we use these tools to boost our productivity without sacrificing our authenticity or the quality of work, because that's something that's always been super important to me as a business owner, those two things for sure. And that's like one of those biggest fears that I've had. And so now with Authentic AI, I just kind of approach AI. I call it a human first approach. And I really try to figure out how we can make these tools work for us in a way that aligns with us, right?
I love that. I'm listening to, well, at the time of this recording, I'm listening to a long podcast from Lex Friedman, I think it is. He interviewed the CEO of Anthropic. I love Claude AI. I think it's the best AI model out there. And then after he's done, Lex is going to be talking with people that work for Anthropic who are developers and who train the models. And it's really interesting to find out where they were, where they are now, where they're going, how they test the models. But they want to make sure, the word he uses, guardrails. We have to make sure that AI is serving us and is not doing nefarious things. And he explained something which is way beyond my knowledge scope. But he said something, there's different levels. And right now, they're, I think, level 1, about ready to go level 2. Level 4 is when AI can start, thinking on its own and programming itself. Level 5, it takes over the world. Right now, because I think his name is Lex. I hope his name is Lex. If it's not Lex Freeman, I'm like, people are going to go, it's not his name. Well, I'm not going to go back and edit the podcast. But he was mentioned the topic of sandboxing. And the guy from Anthropic said, yeah, up until level 3, you can sandbox it. After that, you have to actually have physical barriers. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of scary and nefarious. But I don't want to get too in the weeds, like how does AI work and what models they use. I prefer Anthropic's Claude AI. There's ChatGPT. there's Gemini, and there's a billion other ones out there almost. And I want people to understand that AI can help you be productive. In addition to the way I just shared with people, what I like to do is I spend a lot of time in the LinkedIn DMs. What I like to do is, let's say you're a prospect of mine, Kinsey. I will copy and paste my conversation with you in the cloud and say, okay, how would I reply to this? And it gives me a really good idea to reply based on the thread I just gave it, which is nice, instead of going, just check it in, which sounds stupid, right? So there's many ways to use AI. So I'm curious to know, how do you use AI today to help you be more productive?
There's so many things you can use AI for, right? And honestly, too, like once you first overcome the initial AI scaries and then you start opening your eyes to using the tools, you run into a whole nother set of problems, which is, oh my gosh, there's so many things I can do with this, right? So I definitely have tons of tips that I can share with you. But the first one is that we always need to train AI on our brands, especially if we're using it for our business. That's like the first tip ever. That's like the initial step you need to take in order to get the best results from AI, right? So we can dive deeper into that in just a sec. But I will say, when it comes to using AI tools, and especially if you're wanting to boost your productivity in your business, when you first start trying and testing these tools out, there's two roads I find people go down a lot. The first one is they open up ChatGPT, or they open up their eyes to the world of AI, and they're like, whoa, there's so many things I can do with this. Never mind. I'll do it next week. And they turn into a deer in headlights, or they like turn around. They're like, no, I'm not going to start this. Or people will kind of go down a rabbit hole of AI, right? And end up like realizing that they can do so many different things, trying to revamp things in their business, but they end up like wasting time and not being productive in their business with AI, right? So when it comes to starting to use these tools, I like to think about the two different types of tasks that we do regularly in our businesses, right? Firstly, we have our workflows and systems that we already have in place, those repeatable processes that we do every day or every week in our business. And you have kind of like an organization, a system, a workflow that you already have working for you. When it comes to AI tools, and especially when you're just getting started and you don't really know what you're doing yet, the best thing you can do is start to integrate these tools into the workflows that you already have in place, into the systems that are already working for you, right? So take a look at those workflows and systems and get curious about, oh, could AI help me with this step? Or, oh, could I use AI here to just speed up the process, right? So for me with podcasting, for example, and I know you get this, Mark, it's like I use AI now to help me edit my videos. I also use it to help me write the podcast show notes and the emails that I send out and stuff like that. So I have integrated AI into the steps I already have in place. And then the other set of tasks that we have every day in our business is the day-to-day moments, and also those pressure points or blocks that pop up in our day-to-day that distract us from the task at hand. And this is my favorite thing to talk about, because I don't think a lot of people realize that AI can help us with this stuff too. So like you're typing away, writing an email or something, and it's going really well. And all of a sudden you hit that writer's block and you're like, I don't know how to finish this. Or for example, I was creating a sales page for one of my courses. It was my first time launching the course. I was creating a whole new sales page. And I also decided that I wanted to add a countdown timer to my Squarespace website. I knew that there was probably some code I could use to add a countdown timer, but I did not want to go down a tech forum, because I absolutely hate trying to find the answer to my question on a tech forum. So instead, I was like, I wonder if ChatGPT could help me with this. So I went to ChatGPT. It dished up a code for me for a countdown timer that totally worked. And actually, the first code it gave me didn't quite work. So I had it troubleshoot its own code, and then it worked in like 2 minutes, So it was really, really awesome. Also, remembering to go to AI whenever you hit that block or that pressure point or that stuck moment in your day-to-day working life. And that will help you save time by simply not wasting it.
I love that. One of the things I think people need to consider is to ask AI if it does something. And I'll give an example. So I identify as Tigger from Winnie the Pooh. And that's my energy. I'm upbeat, I'm happy, I'm bouncy. But I realized that my email newsletters were kind of professorial. So I took a newsletter that was going to come out this a couple weeks ago, plugged it into Claude, and I said, write this in the tone of Tigger. Well, it went from professorial to way on the other extreme. I said, okay, well, let's dial this back a little, okay? I don't want to be that optimistic. But what's interesting is when it finished and I got the tone I liked, obviously you don't want to keep a thread going forever because, it wants you to start a new thread every time you thought. And I said, can you write me a prompt? So next time I want to rewrite a newsletter, I can, have the same tone, which I like. And so it gave me a prompt, which I saved. So now when I write my newsletter, I put the prompt in, put the newsletter in it, and it'll convert it into the tone I like. That's just one example. If you're wondering, like you said, can it help me with my day-to-day task? Specifically ask it, hey, can you help me with X? It's either going to say no, or it's going to say, yeah, what do you want to know? So Claude doesn't have access to the internet. ChatGPT and Gemini does. So that's why I like Claude. It's not allowed to go to the internet because usually when I'm having an email newsletter, I am having it rewrite old blog posts, old podcast episodes, and updating them. But I don't want it to put other stuff that I didn't put in there. So all the stuff that's me, even though Claude massages it, it's all me. And I think it's really important. I think one of the ways you can get over being afraid of AI is to say, just to ask Claude or ask ChatGPT, can you do this? Like with a countdown timer for your website, just ask it. The worst it can do is say, no, I can't do that. But more often than not, especially this day and age, 2024, as we head into 2025, you just have to ask, because what's that saying? You don't know if you don't know, and you don't know if you don't ask. So just ask your favorite AI if it can do something. You will probably be surprised. And I'll be honest with you, I am guilty of this. I probably do a fair amount of stuff that I don't need to do anymore that AI could do. And I never stop to think, even though I know the power of asking, say, hey, Claude, can you do this? So I'm learning a lesson on my own show.
Can I tell you my little trick for training yourself to use ChatGPT for situations like that? It's super high tech. You're going to love it. I whipped out my little sticky notepad, and on it, I wrote, can ChatGPT help me with this? And I stuck it next to my computer. And so whenever I was typing away, got stuck on a caption, or got stuck in my moment in my day-to-day, I would do that big eye roll, be like, ugh. And then I would see that sticky note, can ChatGPT help me with this? And, oh, maybe it can. Let's go find out.
I don't know, Kinsey. That's really technical. I don't know. A Post-it on your computer? I don't know. I think I'd rather stick with AI. Mm-hmm. No, but you bring up a very good point, because a lot of people, we get in our own way instead of asking the question. And one of the things I learned recently about AI, I really like how polite Claude is. I haven't used ChatGPT in over a year, so I don't know if it's polite. But when I was creating the introduction for you, it gave me one introduction. I'm like, yuck, that's ugh. And it said, oh, I'm so sorry. I just love that. I mean, I know it's just a machine, but I prefer my AI to be a little more personable. So it's like a real thing. But I'm wondering, listener or viewer, if you're watching this on Spotify or app or YouTube, how many things are you doing that AI could do for you? And I got to ask myself the same question. Am I doing things that AI could do? Now, AI can't do everything, but it probably can do a lot more than you think it can. And before we leave this topic about asking AI and training AI, ask the question. And if you find something like I did with my tone for my email newsletter that resonates and it's like, man, that's perfect. Don't take a chance it's going to be able to replicate it. It's not a human being. It's not going to remember. It can't look at other threads. Ask it to write a prompt. So next time you want the same tone, use the prompt. So have AI write its own prompt. So in the future, it knows exactly what you're talking about because it'll write a very specific prompt that it understands. Make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I totally geek out about training ChatGPT on your brand. You know, I have kind of that background in authentic branding, genuine marketing, and adding personality and leading into your uniqueness is really, really important to me. And I know that when you told me that your email newsletters were professorial, I was a little bit like, really, Mark? But I'm so glad you found your Tigger prompt that helps you add a little pizzazz like you are as a human. But yeah, it really is fun actually to use these tools to explore your brand, your personality, and all that stuff. And I'd love to share my technique for training ChatGPT or Claude on your brand if you don't mind.
Right before we get to that, let me just share this with the audience. Claude cannot look at your website. So I thought to myself, I said, how can I get around that limitation? And so I described my homepage and it analyzed it. And then it said, okay, this is okay, but you should get rid of this and reword this. And I said, what about because I got a button at the top of my page where you can get a free call with me. And I said, well, I said, can you understand hex codes? And said, yes. And they said, what hex code? I didn't hit the prompt it. It says, yeah, what hex code are you using? And I gave it to it and it said, oh, I think it should be a little darker. It should be this one, and gave me the hex code. And so I was just blown away that I just described my website like you did your sales page. It actually created several sales pages for me after asking a series of questions. So I think that's awesome. It can't see the web page, but if you describe it, it can say, yeah, you should move this over here and bring this down here. And now I really like the way my homepage is because it asked me, what did you want it to be like? And it said, do you want it to be professional and minimalistic? And I said, yes. Too many websites have a billion things to do on there. Look, it should have, I believe in the power of one. When you go to my website, mrproductivity.com, there's no doubt what I want you to do when you go to my website. But I'm sure you've seen those websites as well, Kinsey. You go there and it's like all these buttons and flashing and hyperlinks, and a confused person leaves.
Oh, yeah, totally. Okay, I actually have to push back on you real quick, if that's okay. Because, okay, hear me out. I am not like an AI tool pusher, if we're honest. Like I encourage people to find the tool that works for you, you know, and I've heard so many good things about Claude and it's so awesome. However, I will say if you haven't used ChatGPT in the past year, the extra features are really awesome. Like it's so awesome that you were able to describe your website to Claude, but like with ChatGPT, it could have actually visited your website for you or this might actually work for Claude as well. If you can upload documents to it or just like share screenshots, you could screenshot your website and have it analyzed too instead of describing it, which is kind of fun too to play around with.
I didn't think about that. I just described it. And then where there's actually blocks of text, I actually put that into Claude. But then I said testimonial. It doesn't need to know the testimonial because I'm not going to change the testimonial. Okay. My picture, it doesn't need to know my picture. I got a picture of my website, but it also helped me with my menu. I said, this is what menu looks like. Boom, 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 boom. It says, well, I think you should make these changes. And I think you should change this button to here. And so now it's so brand new. I can't say I'm making $1 billion, but I think it's a lot more streamlined than it was before. But my point was, whether you use ChatGPT or Claude, you can go to your website or you have to describe it. The point is, I stepped out of my comfort zone and I asked Claude, can you do this? And in ChatGPT, you can say, hey, go to my website and give me your thoughts. But the point is, you got to have that thought in your head first and say, I wonder if AI can help me here. Again, asking AI. Okay, so you have some other tips for us. Share them if you would, please.
Yeah, yeah. And, just to your point, too, I was just saying you could screenshot because I know you don't know what you don't know. And so I just wanted to offer that up. But yeah, I'd love to talk about training your AI assistant on your brand because exactly like you said, like if you can have ChatGPT really pinpoint your brand voice perfectly, oh my gosh, the results are night and day from like what they would be if you were just like write me a social media caption to if you trained ChatGPT on your brand first and then it was able to produce a social media caption for you that is not only understanding of your brand's strategy, understanding who you are speaking to and marketing to, and also understanding your brand's unique voice and writing style, right? So when it comes to training AI assistants on your brand, and this can work for ChatGPT or Claude, a lot of these tools really are similar in the grand scheme of things. The first thing you need to do is really outline your brand's strategy. I like to call it my brand blueprint for ChatGPT. It's this one single document where ChatGPT actually helps me create this document. And I have to say that because it is 80 pages. It's a crazy big document, but it only takes you like 2 to 4 hours if you get ChatGPT's help, right? So in this document, I outline the 5 core strategies of my brand. The first one is your brand core identity, your mission, vision, values, beliefs, opinions, everything that makes your brand kind of who it is, right? Then also you want to outline your ideal customers. And this is going deeper than just demographics, lifestyle, values. Yes, you want to include those, but it's also, of course, your pain points, desires, and how you help your people, your relationship to them as a brand as well. The third strategy is your brand voice and writing style. And this is where I know we would nerd out for sure because actually one of the best ways to train ChatGPT on your brand voice is sharing content that you have written and having it analyze the content, which sounds very similar to what you did with the Tigger voice after you tweaked it perfectly. Sharing examples of copy that it can replicate, also being more nuanced than just my brand is a friendly tone of voice. Like, no, your brand is so much more in depth than just friendly, right? So you can go deeper into, is it happy-go-lucky or is it kind-hearted or whatever it is for you? But finding those specific words is really, really helpful. And then also analyzing like your formatting, emoji usage, humor style, which I know is probably a huge part for your brand too, right? So really getting it to be able to pinpoint and write copy for you. And then also in the brand blueprint, I like to include my offer suite from my freebies all the way through my paid offers, really detail what those are so that ChatGPT can strategize for me. And when it's writing content for me, all I have to say is, please lead this to a call to action for X offer, my AI Reels Club or my brand blueprint, and it'll understand how to do that. And then I also like to include my brand's messaging in my blueprint too. So once you have this crazy awesome document that's like huge that you're like, what? I would have never created like this all, but it would have taken me a month to create this for myself. I believe Claude does allow for the file upload. So let me know if it does or not. But with ChatGPT, oh yeah, you can totally do this with Claude too. And the free version of ChatGPT as well has the file upload. But once you just have one single document, you can just upload that document to your chat window. The very first time you open it up, it'll read that document in like 10 seconds, I swear. And then it will know all that stuff about your brand. And that's just a great jumping off point for then you to be able to move forward, writing content, strategizing, brainstorming, doing whatever you need to do for your business.
I want you to do us a favor. I want you, because I want to make sure the listener understands what you're talking about. Would you please read those 80 pages? I'm joking. I'm joking. That would be a very long podcast. I want to tell you of an epiphany I had. Now, this is coming out in January, so we recorded this back in November. I had this epiphany at the third week in November. People have been asking me, Mark, when are you going to write a book? I have 2 self-published books, not in my niche, but someone says you should write a book. I said, I don't want to write a book. You already have a book. It's called Podcast Episodes. And I'm like, you know where I'm going with this. I'm like, I don't want to write a book. And then one day I said, hey, Claude, can you write a book for me? I go, sure. Great. And then it told me how I could organize and all this stuff. I said, how about if I selected my podcast episodes, which I want to include in the book, and give it to you? Would you write the introduction and the chapters, the conclusion? Says, sure. I said, so How do I have to give it to you? Just take all the text, put it in one file and upload it. Mm-hmm. And now I'm all excited because now I'm actually going to be able to write a book and it's going to be my stuff. So it's going to be not my guest episodes. It's going to be all my solo episodes, my blog posts, my email newsletters. And it says, I don't even have to come up with the chapters. It'll analyze everything and say, okay, this chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and so on. And I'm not going to copy and paste it and sell it. I'm going to read it and say, I want these changes in chapter 1, these changes in chapter 2. But I got so excited because someday I'll write a real book. Now it's like, holy crap, I can write a book in the next couple of months because Claude will take my stuff and write the book for me. Now, it's only going to get me about 80, 85% there, but it'll come up with a title, a subtitle. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And so I got really excited. I was telling my friends, I'm like, I'm finally going to write that book you've been bugging me about. And they're like, how are you going to do that? I thought you didn't want to write the book. I said, I'm not really going to write it. Claude's going to write it for me. And I pay him $20 a month. And it's like, that's not too bad for a book writer. But that's the kind of thing you could do with AI. And I was like so emotional. I was so pumped. And of course, I was letting people know in the middle of their work days because I don't have a real job. These other people have real jobs. I'm just a solopreneur. And they're like, okay, dude, I got work to do. I'm like, yeah, you understand. I'm going to write a book. And so I was so excited when I learned that, Kinsey, that I can actually write my book and I don't have to go through, other than the initial going through and pick out what podcast episodes I want. And I'll use a prompt that says, hey, make sure there's nothing outdated in here and all that good stuff. But I don't know. Will you share my excitement? Because most people don't care about me. Will you share my excitement with me?
Yes. I mean, seriously, it is so I'm so excited to nerd out with people about the AI thing. And they're always DMing me. If you ever need to DM me, Mark, you totally can. Although I'm on Instagram, not the LinkedIn as much. So just to throw that out there. But it's so exciting and it's so fun when your eyes are open to this stuff. And really it is about just being curious. And you know what else I loved? Okay. So for Authentic AI, I've already kind of shared this with you. We use a human-first approach to AI tools. It's really important to us to boost our productivity without sacrificing our authenticity or quality of work, right? And one of the ways that I share that people should do this is to bring your own thoughts, opinions, ideas to these tools, right? That's why I always promote train this on your brand. And then when you're having it create content for you or do tasks for you, tell it your perspective, tell it the tips you want to include, tell it these things about you, because if you don't, then it's just going to come up with the most generic stuff ever. Mm-hmm. But that's what I love what you shared about your book idea and using your own words, your own podcast, your own ideas, because that truly is how you're going to get the best results and be able to use these tools to produce the work you would have already been producing that truly is your own more quickly, but still not turn Mark into a robot, which none of us want.
Hey, it's Mr. Productivity and a quick timeout from the episode. I have 2 big favors to ask of you. If you are watching or listening to this on Spotify, first of all, if you would give me a follow, that would help the Spotify algorithm to serve this podcast up to other people so I can help them like I'm helping you. And would you leave me a comment? There's a place here on Spotify where you can send me a comment. You can say hello. You can say, what up, dog? You can say, hey, Mr. Productivity, love the podcast today. Just remember, Mr. is all spelled out, M-I-S-T-E-R, Mr. Productivity. Hey, thanks for your attention. Let's get back to the episode. Woohoo! Yeah, matter of fact, what I do is I record my videos and I take, right now, this is a little behind the scenes for everyone. I am doing this interview with Kinsey on my MacBook Pro. Right behind my MacBook Pro is my iPhone, and I'm also recording that. And you may be saying, well, why is he recording it twice? Because the iPhone is the right size for Instagram. So I don't want to have to, and I could do it with the software we both use called Descript. I don't want to mess around with that. I can actually take the video from my iPhone, upload the script, and it'll make all the shorts for me, but they're properly sized for it. Then when after it's done, I take the transcript from the actual short, I put it in the Claude and say, okay, make me an Instagram post with hashtags, and then make me a smaller, less than 300 character post which I use when I upload the video to X, Blue Sky, and Threads. I wish they would take hashtags out behind the barn and shoot them. It's old technology. Let's get rid of hashtags, because I don't search for hashtags. I search for AI or productivity. I don't search for hashtags. So I think we're getting there. X doesn't really want hashtags. LinkedIn's deprecated them. I hope Instagram does as well, because just look for the stuff you want to look for. But my point is, I got the system down. After Descript gives me the short, then I go and put it into Claude and say, make me the post. I know there's a lot of other apps out there that do it all for you. And the good thing about it is, as consumers, as users, we have a choice. I happen to prefer the way Claude works. You like ChatGPT. Good news. You can use ChatGPT, and I can use Claude, and this person over here can use Gemini. And those aren't the only 3 models out there. Mm-hmm. So if you're not happy with what you're using, well, go try someone else until you get the results you like. They all have their different things. Claude just released where you can actually speak the text. Is that a make or break it? Not really. It is pretty cool where I can just open up the app on my iPhone and say, write me a post on, and give us some words, and it'll come up something much more eloquent than I can. Probably can speak better than I can as well. But my point is don't just settle, ChatGPT or just Claude or just Gemini. Try different models. One thing I found across the big 3, which is ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini, is as smart as these things are, it sometimes can't count. So like a meta description has to be 150 characters or less. Even if I say 150 total characters, including spaces, sometimes it goes too long. And I'm like, so you can write code, you can create sales pages, but you can't count characters. And it's across all models. About 50% of the time, it's too long. And I'm like, seriously? You're this smart and you can't count the number of characters?
Yeah, I know. That's definitely a thing for ChatGPT too. ChatGPT does have the voice feature too. I know, it's exactly what you said. Like, people always, it's the same with like social media schedulers and any kind of technology. People are always worried about like, oh, which one is the best? I'm like, they're all pretty much the same. Just try one and use it till it doesn't work for you anymore. Then try another one. But yeah, it's hilarious. Like the math thing for language models is bad. And then also, I don't know if you've played around with image generation for AI stuff, but the hands are horrible with AI tools. They're getting a little better, but it's hilarious. Like if you're ever wondering if an image was AI generated and has a human in it, take a look at the hands and see if they look weird, because that's usually a telltale sign.
There's a 4th model that I've had somewhat good luck with, and that's Grok or XAI on X. But I still come back to Claude. I don't like using Gemini because it's associated with Google. I'm a privacy nerd, so I try to stay away from there. ChatGPT, I know it's really good, but when I say I'm a privacy nerd, Kinsey, I mean I'm a privacy nerd. I have Proton Mail, Proton Drive, Proton VPN, Proton Pass. I use DuckDuckGo browser for most of the time. I just don't want to be tracked. So I try to work with Claude. Yes, it has a huge language model, but it doesn't have access to the internet. So I feel a little better with its guardrails. Not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying that Claude doesn't ever give me mistakes, but for me, I've tried the big 4, if I'm going to include Grok, and the best results for me are Claude. But what I want to make sure the listener understands is maybe you need to try a different model. If you're like, I tried ChatGPT, it's not giving the results, I'm not happy. Well, you can go try the other ones and maybe you'll get better results. Maybe you won't. But you won't know till you try. You can't ask me or Kinsey what we think is best, because Kinsey's a ChatGPT fan. I'm a Claude fan. I know people who are Grok fans. You need to actually take it out for a test drive yourself and see what works best for you, because we can only tell you what we do and how we're using the AI. We cannot tell you what one you should go to. So when AI experts are saying, oh, you should go to ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude or Grok, I hope you agree with me here that you need to test it yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I take, it's about, one of the things I say is like, make AI work for you in a way that aligns with you, right? You don't need to completely, AIify your business and life all at once, the first thing, because that's usually how you end up turning into that deer in headlights, right? So instead, just like try to find whatever works for you. Like I propose the same thing in business with our systems and workflows and all the different stuff. So I think you're spot on there, Mark.
I remember I did an experiment and I took a DM I was sending to LinkedIn and I said, write this in the tone of Gary Vaynerchuk without the cursing. Because I know he's got the Jersey potty mouth. He's like, yo, what's up, my man? I'm like, okay, I can't send that on LinkedIn. Okay. No, that's not my voice. I am not Gary Vaynerchuk. Okay. I do not send things in his voice or his tone. And some people do that. They think it's funny. No, because then when you get on a Zoom call with someone, they're like, wait a minute, it's incongruent to your brand. We talked about a brand a little bit here on the show. Make sure that what AI gives you is in your tone and your newsletters are in your voice, tone, voice, interchangeably, your content. It's all got to be the same, because if there is that gap and people say, oh, Kinsey is this way on her newsletters and she's this way on social media and she's this way in public, they're going to get confused. So your brand and your voice and your tone have got to be consistent.
Yeah, that's actually one of my kind of like, one of those big epiphanies and founding stories, going way back to my original brand, Feel Good Social, that I've been growing for 5 years. And Authentic AI is our sister brand that we started about 1.5 years ago. But for sure, it was one of those things where little itty baby entrepreneur Kinsey back in 2018, I was like, okay, I'm going to try this, and I'm looking to all the big names online and seeing people show up. And I was thinking, oh, so this is what I have to do to be successful, right? So I was trying to like emulate them, look like them, share the tips, and just try to go for it and stuff. And very, very soon, I became exhausted. I really have trouble showing up as someone I'm not all the time. It exhausts me. And it wasn't fun for me. It was tiring for me. And also, I wasn't attracting my people because people can smell BS through the screen. So way back in 2018, I was coming on like 6 months in my business. I kind of made that decision to lean into who I truly am and lean into authenticity and show up as who I truly am, like frizzy hair, dirt under my fingernails, slight like Southern accent coming in for whatever reason. I decided to lean into who I am in my brand and show up in that way. And honestly, it was so much more fun, enjoyable, easy for me to show up in my business. And also it was more magnetic for my ideal customers and the people who I can truly help. So that was this huge shift for me. And then when it comes to using AI tools, I think that that's why I'm such a proponent of really getting curious about who you are and training your AI tool on who you are, because it can understand that and it wants to help you, right? So it'll try to show up in your uniqueness as best it can, but you have to get curious about who you are and then also tell ChatGPT or Claude or whatever tool you're using who you are too.
I want to pivot to social media because one of the things I'm really focused on, and I had a revelation from a coach I invested in, and it's not the content that makes money. I don't know anybody makes money off of content. People do. I just don't know any of them. Where the money happens is in the DMs. So here's where I'm going with this. So I spend about 2 hours a day DMing my niche on LinkedIn. I want to bring that over to Instagram. The problem I'm having, and maybe you can give me some suggestions here, some free advice. With LinkedIn, people are using their real name. On Instagram, it may be Kinsey Kitty 685. Are you a real person? And so I know people who do very, very well on Instagram DMs. Matter of fact, the head of Instagram says the two magical things you could do on Instagram is when people share your content, not like repost it. I mean, they share it in the DMs, or if you're DMing people and having conversations, it's not the content. This is the head of Instagram saying this. It's all happening in the DM. And I really want to take my outreach I'm doing on LinkedIn and bring it over to Instagram. The problem is you don't have to use your real name on Instagram, but most people do on LinkedIn because it's a professional network. Do you have a DMing campaign on Instagram? And if so, How do you get over that? This is not the real name.
Oh man, I love this question. It's so interesting. I'm going to give you my opinion, and also, realize that it might not be the thing for you. But
I don't want AI's opinion. I want Kinsey's opinion.
No, I'm saying my advice might not be the advice that you take and implement, right? Just because, whatever works for you, Mark. For example, this is going to get super nerdy. We don't have to go down a human design hole, but I don't know if you've ever heard of human design. It's this kind of like astrology thing, like personality test situation. Long story short, my human design chart is a projector, which projectors aren't necessarily supposed to like force themselves on people as much and stuff. And I feel this in my business, right? Because I started out by cold emailing and like cold DMing, or like just like I started out by like kind of doing more of a push strategy, and I've practiced with like lots of different strategies, and I find my people like to come to me instead of me being like, hey, let me help you as much, so like for me, I don't necessarily do cold DMing on Instagram. And also I will say that like I think the vibe might be just a little bit different on Instagram than on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is about networking and in that professional environment, and Instagram isn't as much, right? It doesn't mean that you can't do that, but I think that the vibe is different, and maybe the approach then to cold DMing might be different in a little bit of a way. Instagram really thrives when you do focus on like genuine relationships with people, when you do show real interest. On Instagram, if you send a cold DM that's like kind of salesy, people are probably going to assume someone's a robot behind there, and or just like it's not heartfelt, it's not real. They'll probably end up just ignoring it, right? So for me, my bread and butter on Instagram, you're like, yeah, I'll show up, I'll create reels, I'll do all that stuff. I agree with you. Like I'm creating content just to be active and like bring people in if possible, but I'm not putting a lot of pressure on myself to perform in that way. But my bread and butter on Instagram is actually Instagram stories. And I feel like you might really enjoy these.
Oh, so, I love stories. I love stories. And as we talked about on your podcast, my favorite platform is Snapchat. Instagram stole stories after they wouldn't sell to Mark Zuckerberg. People don't realize this. People go, oh, Snapchat's not a big platform. Google tried to buy it twice and Mark Zuckerberg tried to buy it once. So why would they buy something that they didn't think was worth it? But that's why we have Instagram stories, is because of Snapchat. I love stories, and I do something really strange with stories. This is going to blow people's mind. So I got to put this into context. I run every day at first light, just when it's starting to get light outside, because I love getting those first light pictures when the sun's just start coming up. I also can only see out of one eye, my right eye, and I have a balance disorder. Now, you need to understand that before I tell you what I'm about to tell you. I will go out there and see a gorgeous sunrise and take a picture. Then I resume running while I'm posting the picture to Snapchat, Instagram stories, Blue Sky, X, and Threads. And people go, how do you do that? I have two eyes. I don't have a balance problem. I can't do it. I've been doing it for years. And so, yes, I guess you'd call it multitasking. But I love stories because stories give you an opportunity to see behind the curtain in people's lives. I encourage people to, because they disappear in 24 hours. So if you want to share something and it doesn't be permanent, if you want it to be permanent, that's real. But if you want it to be something behind the scenes or something more intimate, you can send a story. So I'm with you on there. I love stories. Stories are awesome. And I don't even use hashtag anymore, because I was using hashtags. They say put 3 hashtags on a story. I said, I wonder what happens if I don't use hashtags anymore. No change. People still look at my stories. I'm like, why are we using hashtags anymore? So I agree with you 100%. I think on Instagram, and this again, coming from the head of Instagram, it's the DMs and the stories. Now, if you're an influencer like Gary Vaynerchuk or Brene Brown or one of those big people, yeah, your reel or your posts, like Gary could put a picture of his hand on Instagram and get thousands of likes. I'm not Gary Vaynerchuk. If I did that, people are like, what is this all about? They're like, who's this guy? So I agree with you. I love stories. Stories are the bomb, as they used to say.
Yeah. Okay. I knew you would be good at the stories for sure. But bringing it back to like the DM situation then, right? So for me, my approach to stories is like, cultivating relationships in that way. So often people will reply to my stories, but then also a great way to like start DMing people on Instagram. I think you need to think about it as like a building of relationship sort of thing, but starting with scrolling through people's stories and just replying to their stories is a really great way to start because that turns into a DM, right? And also like thinking about it as like, okay, the first 5 times you reply to someone's story or comment on their post, like don't make it, networky, right? People can kind of, again, smell the BS through the screen. And in LinkedIn, that's kind of what it's for, but Instagram, it's not, right? So really focus on like maybe cultivating a relationship with these people, right?
And be human, like you say, be human. So when I reply to someone's story, it's not like, hey, Kinsey, I really appreciate your content. Keep it up. I don't do that. I'm like, that's an awesome sunrise picture. Oh, your dog is so cute. That's what a human being would say.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think people are overthinking. What do I say? Like even on my LinkedIn DM project I'm doing, I work with Claude to come up with DMs that are friendly. So I don't pitch. I don't pitch until like the 4th or 5th DM. They're really short. Like the first DM I send anyone who connects with me is, hey, Kinsey, thank you for connecting. I'm looking forward to getting to know you, Mark. That's it. Because they don't even know me. They just connect with me. So it's got to be gentle. So many people, and you probably see this, you get pitch, or you're a woman, you probably get those guys. My wife gets those guys all the time. Guys get the girls. And it's like, come on, really? Can we just stop? Because I want to have real relationships with people. I'm married. I'm not looking for a mate. So I wish people would just stop doing that. I do block you. If you send me something sexually explicit or sexually suggestive, I do block you. And then it says you want to block all the other profiles you make under this name. I say yes, because that's not why I'm on social media. I'm on social media to have real conversations with real people, preferably adults. I don't want to have a conversation with a kid. That's not what I do. My kids are gone. They're 27 and 30. But I think no matter what platform you're on, and when you're using AI, we're going to tie this all back together. You need to have it sound like you, not just human. It needs to sound like you. And that's why Kinsey was talking about training the model so it sounds like you and your tone so that everything you do and say is all congruent. If they start seeing this, haphazard, they're going to, number one, they're going to know it's AI because they're like, wait a minute. Okay, she sounds like this one way, and then this way she sounds different. That's incongruency, and that's going to affect your brand.
Totally. I get so tickled when AI can write a caption. I'm very critical of the copy that AI writes for me. I went to school for communications. I was opinions editor of the college newspaper. I'm a word nerd, self-proclaimed. I love language, right? But that's why I put my ChatGPT through the ringer of, okay, I'm going to train you on my brand voice, but I'm changing up those words that don't sound like me. And I'm doing all this stuff, right? But I get so tickled when ChatGPT can actually write something and I'm like, I feel like I could have written this and it's nice. And I've actually had people, so, of course, my AI brand, I'm promoting all these AI tools to my email list and stuff. And I've had people reply to my emails who have been in my audience for years being like, so did you use ChatGPT to write this ebook? Because it really sounds like you. And I'm usually like, yeah, like 85%. Maybe I tweaked a few words here or there or something, but it's really fun. I truly, honestly, with the brand blueprint, the file upload method, and, I use ChatGPT, but Claude can do this too. But I have found that actually my ChatGPT has gotten so much better over time. And actually ChatGPT has this cool memory feature where now the chats can talk to each other and stuff, and you can kind of communicate in between chats. But I've found that it really is learning, and it actually does an amazing job of understanding who I am and speaking to me like me. I love it.
I don't think Claude at this point can refer to other chats. That's why earlier in the episode, I said, give me a prompt. So when I want you to convert another newsletter, because my newsletters are generally 6 to 8 weeks ahead of schedule because they're evergreen. There's nothing dated. And so I create that prompt. But here's the thing with AI, ChatGPT will come up with a feature And then Claude will come up with it, Perplexity and Gemini and Grok. An AI is not going to be so far ahead, the others aren't going to catch up. They're in competition. We benefit as the users because they're always coming up and trying to one-upmanship each other. So the thing is, I've been with Claude for over a year. And if I went back to ChatGPT, well, obviously ChatGPT can't look at all the chats I've had on Claude. So I'm going to say on Claude because eventually they'll get that cross-chatting ability. And I think that's important. That's why if I'm really working on a project, like my book project, when I start writing my book, that'll be a single thread. I don't want to have a thread for chapter 1 and chapter 2 and chapter 3 and chapter 4, because right now, as far as I know, maybe this has changed. I don't know. But right now, I don't think Claude can look at different. But you know what I should do? I should ask it if it can. I just thought about that right now. When we're done with this call, I'm going to ask Claude, can you look at other chats or threads, whatever word you use for them? So I'm going to take my own advice. I'm going to ask it if it can do it, because maybe it can. I'm not even aware of it.
There you go. Maybe it can. Yeah. I know they really are always updating and everything for sure. And that is really nice. Yeah. Because you can expect most AI tools to be like, they're always trying to be the best they can be, right?
So before we wrap up, before I ask you where people can go to find out more about you and what you're doing, any final thoughts about something we talked about, something we didn't talk about that you wish we did?
Yeah, I mean, here's one of the things I do like to share, and it is kind of focused on women and using AI tools, if you don't mind me sharing about that. But there have been studies done that men are 2 times more likely to use the top 50 AI tools than women. There's a few different reasons for this. It's because culturally, we haven't always felt welcomed into STEM subjects, science and math. You know, we've been raised to not quite feel as techie as men often. You know, we all know Silicon Valley is mostly men, and the AI tech world is also mostly men. That's okay. And at the same time, it is kind of an issue, especially if you think about the gender income gap, because AI tools have actually been proven to boost your productivity by up to 40%. That's like working 2 extra days per week. So if you think about the workplace of more men embracing AI tools than women, then if men are being more productive, then who's more likely to be put up for that promotion or put up for that raise? And that's just how culture is, right? And for decades and decades, we've all been trying to decrease this gender income gap. But with AI tools and with more men embracing them, it just is more likely that this could drastically increase, right? The other thing that really gets me when it comes to women using AI tools is why. Again, we're not necessarily techie or whatever, you know, but okay, I still remember the first time another woman was interviewing me on her podcast, and she looked at me and she's like, so what do you say to the women who feel guilty for using AI tools, who feel like they're cutting corners or they're not doing the work? And my reaction was kind of like, oh, this is a thing. Okay. You know, because it's not something that we necessarily think about as women, but it is something that we have to show, like it's how we've had to show up in the world often, unfortunately. You know, it's just the reality of our culture. Women often do have to be a little bit more concerned about the work that they do, about the way that we show up in the world in order to be respected, in order to show that our work is worth respecting, right? Unfortunately. But that does make us a little bit more concerned about that sort of stuff, about having to put in the work and fearing cutting corners, right? And so I just like to share this because it's not really anything that anyone puts on us, but it is one of those internal belief systems that I think we need to shift for ourselves as women, to realize that these tools aren't cutting corners. It's a tool that can boost our productivity. There definitely are ways that we can use these tools without sacrificing our authenticity or quality of work, right? And also, the other reason women and just underrepresented people, like a diverse selection of people. I'm not saying that men should not use these tools at all, but I think that a diverse selection of people need to use these tools because these tools are user trained at this point. Whatever we're putting into these tools can be used to train future models. And I really think that the way we can create future AI models that are the best they can be is by inputting a diverse amount of information into them now. Masculine energy, feminine energy, like all of the different perspectives, beliefs, language that we all use. That's how we're going to get the best tools in the future. So I like to just share about that because it's something that I feel as a woman. It definitely is one of those things like you feel that you're like, I got to do the work, you know, but these tools can help you still do the work and we don't have to feel guilty about it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. So where can people go to find out more about you?
Yeah, DIY with .ai is my website. So DIY with .ai. And you can find my brand blueprint at DIY with .ai/blueprint. And then I know you're a LinkedIn dude. I'm usually on Instagram, guys. So please, if you can, follow me on Instagram instead of LinkedIn, because I probably won't see any messages for a while. But my Instagram is Authentic AI for Entrepreneurs. And I have that Authentic AI for Entrepreneurs podcast too.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. After you go follow Kinsey on Instagram, not LinkedIn, and you go to her website, go to my website, MrProductivity.com, MISTER, MrProductivity.com. When you go there, what I want you to do is at the top of the page. You can't miss it. Until next time, stay productive and stay positive.